Noah Reed hadn't meant to give away the only scarf he owned, especially not in the middle of the worst snowstorm New York had seen in years. But when he saw her standing there, shivering on the corner of 5th and East 60th, holding her arms tight around herself and blinking through snowflakes, it was like something in his chest cracked open. "Are you okay?" he asked, already unwrapping the worn gray scarf from around his neck. He barely registered the cold biting into his skin. The woman looked startled, like she hadn't even noticed him approach. Her cheeks were flushed pink from the wind, and her coat, though clearly expensive, was too thin for this weather. "I'm fine," she said quickly, though her teeth chattered as she spoke. "You look like you're freezing," Noah said. "Here, take this." Before she could protest, he gently wrapped the scarf around her neck. It was old, fraying at the edges, but thick and warm. She stared at him, stunned. "You don't have to." "I want to," he said, smiling. "I've got a thick hoodie under this coat. You look like you're one gust of wind away from turning into an icicle." She let out a soft, surprised laugh. "Thank you," she said, her voice quieter now. "That's really kind of you." Noah nodded and was about to turn to head back down the sidewalk when a small voice called from behind him. "Daddy." A little boy in a puffy red coat came running through the snowbanks, hugging Noah's leg tightly. His curls were damp from the snow, and his cheeks were as red as apples. "Hey, buddy," Noah said, crouching down to him. "You okay?" "Yeah," the boy said, then looked up at the woman. "Who's she?" Noah stood up, brushing snow off his jeans. "Just someone who needed a scarf more than I did Jace." The woman crouched down to Jace's level, her eyes soft. "You've got a great dad," she said to him. Jace beamed. "He makes the best pancakes." Noah laughed. "That's a fact." The woman stood again, tugging the scarf tighter around her neck. "Well, thank you again. I mean it." "No problem," Noah said with a shrug. "Stay warm, all right." He turned to guide Jace toward the crosswalk, and didn't see her lingering for a moment longer, watching him disappear into the flurry. The next day, Noah was back behind the counter at the local diner he worked at part-time. It was a small, cozy spot with cracking red vinyl booths and a bell that jingled every time the door opened. He was wiping down tables when he heard the bell ring and glanced up, then froze. It was her. She looked different today, still stunning, but in a sharp navy coat and heels that didn't belong in this kind of diner. Her hair was sleek, and there was a confidence in her step that hadn't been there yesterday. She walked straight up to him. "You," she said, grinning, "you gave me your scarf." He blinked. "You found me." "Well, I was walking around this area, and I remembered your hoodie said Joe's Diner on the back," she said, pointing. "So, took a chance." "Wow," he said, a little dazed. "You're really determined to return a scarf." She held it out to him, freshly laundered and neatly folded. "It's yours." He took it but didn't look away from her. "You didn't have to go through the trouble." "I wanted to," she said, then she stuck out her hand. "Willa Bennett." "Noah Reed," he said, shaking her hand. "And that was my son, Jace, yesterday, in case you ever need to complete the family tree." She laughed. "I liked him. He's got spirit." "He gets that from his mom," Noah said, then paused. "Well, she passed a few years ago." Her smile faltered slightly. "I'm sorry." "It's okay, we're doing all right." He looked around. "Can I get you a coffee, on the house?" Willa hesitated, then smiled. "Actually, do you have time for lunch?" He blinked. "Lunch?" "Yes, I'm starving, and I'd rather not eat alone. And I figure anyone who gives away their only scarf in a snowstorm is probably good company." He stared at her for a second, trying to assess if this was real. She looked serious, warm, a little amused but not mocking. "I get off in 10, he said. "Can we meet at booth 3? "I'll be there." It started with coffee and burgers. Then it turned into stories. She asked about Jace, and he asked about her job. She was vague, said she was in investments. There was something polished about her, something that didn't quite match the boots she wore yesterday or the way she'd looked so cold and out of place. But he didn't press. They laughed, a lot. She was quick-witted and sharp but kind. Curious. She asked about his art he used to paint before Jace, before life got so busy and survival became the priority. She told him about her love for old French films and her terrible baking skills. Somehow, 2 hours passed. "I should go," she said, finally standing, but she didn't look happy about it. "Important meeting?" he asked. "Something like that," she said, then paused. "Can I see you again?" He blinked. Yeah, sure. I mean, I'd like that." She grinned. "Great, I'll find you." He watched her leave and thought about how strange and warm she made him feel after knowing her for only a day. He shook his head, smiling. "Dad," Jace said that night over dinner, "you're smiling like you ate 3 cookies." Noah ruffled his son's hair. "Maybe I did." Willa stood at the floor-to-ceiling window of her penthouse suite that night, still wearing the scarf he gave her. "Who is he?" her assistant asked, entering the room with a folder. Willa didn't turn around. "He's different." "Different how?" "He didn't know who I was. He wasn't trying to impress me. He gave me the only scarf he had." The assistant blinked. "You're Willa Bennett. You're one of the youngest billionaires in the country. You could buy that entire diner." Willa smiled faintly. "Exactly." 2 days later, she showed up at Noah's door. He opened it, holding a paintbrush and blinking in surprise. "Willa." "I told you I'd find you," she said, holding up 2 takeout bags. "Dinner." Jace peeked out from behind Noah's legs. "Is that Chinese food?" "Sure is," she said. Jace grinned. "You can come in." And she did. As the snow fell quietly outside, Noah watched her laugh with his son and thought, for the first time in years, that maybe something beautiful was beginning. Noah stood at the kitchen sink, rinsing out the last of the takeout containers as the low hum of laughter floated in from the living room. Jace was on the floor, cross-legged, fiercely defending his toy spaceship from Willa's improvised alien invasion using chopsticks and a spoon. The sound of them so easy, so natural made something unfamiliar stir in his chest. He wiped his hands on a dish towel and leaned in the doorway, watching her. She looked out of place in his small apartment not because of what she wore, but because of the way she moved, like she didn't belong to fluorescent lights and second-hand furniture. And yet, she was here, crouched on the rug, making laser noises with a 7-year-old like it was the most important thing in the world. "Do you moonlight as a space villain?" Noah asked, arms crossed. Willa looked up at him, her eyes bright. "Only when the galaxy needs balance." "She vaporized the captain," Jace added, scandalized. Willa leaned in conspiratorially. "He was plotting a rebellion." Noah shook his head. "I was going to offer dessert, but now I'm reconsidering." "You have dessert?" she asked, standing up with an exaggerated gasp. "You didn't lead with that." He opened the fridge and pulled out a container. "Leftover chocolate cake, might be a little dry." She leaned on the counter, peering inside. "I'll risk it." They sat at the small table, the 3 of them, passing forks between them, and for a long moment, it felt like they'd done this before, like she belonged right here, laughing at Jace's jokes and pretending to argue about frosting. After Jace went to bed reluctantly, after managing to negotiate 1 extra bedtime story, Noah walked Willa to the door. She paused with her hand on the knob, glancing back at him. "He's a great kid." "He really is," Noah said, voice softer now. "He's my whole world." She nodded, then tilted her head. "You ever think about painting again?" He leaned against the doorframe, caught off guard. "Haven't had time or space." I used to think I'd get back to it eventually, but eventually turns into never if you let it. You shouldn't let it, she said. You talk about it like there's still something there. He studied her for a moment. You always this persistent. I don't like wasted potential, she said simply. Before he could answer, she reached into her purse and pulled out a folded piece of paper. There's an art show opening next week. Independent artists, you should go. He unfolded it. Can't afford to rent a booth. I didn't say you had to rent anything, she said. Just go, see what other people are doing. You never know what it might spark. He looked at her, then down at the flyer. Thanks, he said finally. She gave him a brief smile and stepped into the hallway. Good night, Noah. Night, Willa. The door clicked shut behind her, but her presence lingered like the scent of jasmine she always wore, subtle but impossible to ignore. The next afternoon, Noah sat cross-legged on the floor of his bedroom, a box of old canvases and tubes of paint in front of him. They were stiff, most barely usable, but it didn't matter. He pulled out a blank canvas, set it on the easel he hadn't touched in years, and hesitated. Jace peeked in. Are you painting? I think I might be, Noah said. Can I watch? Noah smiled. Sure. He dipped the brush into the thick blue paint and dragged it across the canvas. The stroke was clumsy, uneven, but it was something. He added another, and then another, until the shape of a skyline began to emerge. That evening, he walked Jace to school and took the long way back through the park. The air was brisk, but the snow had melted just enough to reveal patches of brown grass. As he rounded the corner, he saw her seated on a weathered bench, sunglasses on, a large coffee cup in her hands. You're following me now, he asked. I was here first, she replied. You're the one who took the scenic route. He sat down beside her. What are you doing in this part of town? Meeting someone nearby. Had time to kill. He glanced at her outfit-tailored wool coat, leather gloves, boots that had definitely never been bought off a clearance rack. You always look like you stepped off a magazine cover. She tilted her head toward him. You always look like you don't try, but somehow still pull it off. He laughed. Is that a compliment? I'll let you decide. They sat in silence for a moment, the city humming around them. Why do you do it? He asked. She glanced at him. Do what? This, us, the takeout dinners and park benches. She took a sip of her coffee. Because it's not about what I have, it's about what I feel when I'm with you. He looked at her, really looked at her, and felt the weight of her words settle into his chest. You don't owe me anything. I know, she said, but maybe I want to give you something anyway. That night, after Jace was asleep again, Noah pulled out his phone and searched the name Willa Bennett. It didn't take long. There she was featured in Forbes, in front of magazine covers, at panels and galas. Venture capitalist, founder of a firm that handled investments worth billions. Billionaire under 35. The kind of woman who had champagne flown in from Paris and owned an entire collection of vintage cars. He stared at the screen. Then he looked around his apartment, the chipped tile, the cracked lampshade, the stack of overdue utility bills. And he realized something terrifying. He was falling for her. And he had absolutely no idea what that meant. Noah hadn't seen Willa in 3 days. He hadn't called her either, not because he didn't want to, but because he didn't know how to pretend things hadn't shifted. Not after what he'd learned. Not after seeing her in a sequined gown on the cover of a magazine beside a headline that read, Wall Street's youngest powerhouse. She was everywhere on financial blogs, in archived interviews, in photographs at black tie galas, standing beside men in tuxedos and women in diamonds. She didn't just live in a different world, she owned it. And he didn't know how he fit into that. He didn't mention it to Jace, who kept asking when the lady with the cool laugh was coming back. Noah only said she was busy. That was true, probably always had been. On the fourth evening, he stood outside the art show she'd told him about, the flyer still folded in his coat pocket. The gallery sat at the corner of a renovated warehouse in Soho, all exposed brick and glass. He hadn't planned to come. He didn't feel like he belonged, but something kept pulling at him, her voice, telling him to go. To look. To see what could wake up inside him again. Inside, the space was warm, lit by soft track lights that made the colors on canvas glow. He moved slowly from piece to piece, some abstract, some vivid cityscapes, some so strange they made his head tilt without realizing. He was standing in front of a large painting of a woman's back, delicate brushstrokes, hair tangled in the wind, the shadows of a skyline behind her, when a voice cut through the quiet. "I didn't think you'd actually come." He turned. Willa stood beside him, wearing black slacks and a cream jacket, her hair pulled back in a low twist. Simple, understated, still somehow arresting. "I almost didn't," he admitted. "Why?" He didn't answer at first, then, "Because I looked you up." Her expression didn't change. "I saw who you are," he continued. "I saw everything." She turned slightly toward him, and I don't know what any of this is anymore," he said, his voice low. You've got a life I can't even imagine, Willa. Private jets, billion-dollar meetings, penthouses I'll never step foot in. I've got a chipped bathtub and a 7-year-old who still crawls into my bed when he has nightmares. We're not from the same universe." She stepped closer, her voice steady but soft. "You think came to your apartment because I got lost? I came because I wanted to. I stayed because it felt real. You didn't ask for anything from me." "I didn't know there was anything to ask for." "That's exactly why I stayed," she said. "Noah, people treat me like I'm made of gold or glass. You talked to me like I was a person. You gave me your scarf when I was freezing. No agenda, no expectations." He exhaled, running a hand through his hair. "But how does that work? You've got 20 people answering your phone calls. I've got a second job delivering groceries on weekends." She touched his arm. "I didn't fall for your job title or your apartment. I fell for the way you look at your son like he's the best thing that ever happened to you, for the way you talk about painting like it's still a part of you, even if you buried it. I fell for the quiet strength you don't even realize you carry." He looked at her then, really looked at her. "You're in love with me." "Yes," she said without hesitation. "I didn't mean to. I didn't plan it, but here we are." He stepped back, needing space he didn't understand. "It doesn't change the fact that I'm not enough for your world." "You're enough for mine," she said. "I don't need someone to buy me things. I need someone who tells the truth, someone who doesn't flinch when things get messy, someone who makes me laugh when I forget how." He shook his head. "You talk like we're just people, but we're not in the eyes of the world." Willa looked around the gallery, then back at him. "I don't care about the world. I care about you." He didn't know how to answer that, so he didn't. Instead, he turned back to the painting in front of them. "This one's yours, isn't it?" he asked finally. She smiled faintly. "It is." He looked at the figure in the painting again, her back to the world, standing on the edge of something unseen. "Why her?" "Because she's always looking forward but never running," Willa said. "She's standing still but choosing it." He nodded slowly. "I've never seen anything like it." "You could paint something better," she said, "if you let yourself." He met her eyes. "I started again, a few nights ago." Her lips parted slightly. "What did you paint?" "A skyline," he said, "but not the real one, the one I wish I could see." For the first time that evening, a quiet flicker of hope passed between them. "I want to see it," she said. "Maybe," he said, "if you're still around." "I'm not going anywhere." They stood there, side by side, in the middle of a world that had always felt too far apart. And for the first time, Noah wondered if maybe it didn't have to be. Later that night, as he tucked Jace into bed, the boy looked up sleepily. "Did you see her today?" "Yeah," Noah said. "I did." "Did you tell her we have pancakes on Sundays?" Noah smiled. "Not yet." Jace rolled over, already half asleep. "You should, she'd like that." In the hallway, Noah paused by the door, listening to the soft rhythm of his son's breathing. Then he walked to the living room, pulled out his paints, and began again this time with a new canvas. One large enough to hold both the skyline he dreamed of and the woman who made him believe it could be real. Willa stood with her arms crossed as the wind swept through the rooftop, stirring the linen tablecloths and flickering the golden candle flames. The Manhattan skyline stretched behind her, the city glittering against the night like someone had shaken stars into glass. She glanced at her watch again. He was late. The rooftop restaurant had been closed for a private dinner. She'd arranged every detail herself, not her assistant, not a planner. She needed to do this on her own. A soft shuffle of footsteps behind her made her turn. Noah stepped into the glow of the rooftop lights, a bit breathless, his coat damp from the drizzle. He looked around at the white draped table, the string lights suspended above them, the single easel beside the glass railing. "I wasn't sure you'd come," she said, her voice quieter than she meant. "I almost didn't," he admitted. "I stood outside for 10 minutes, didn't know what to do with myself. And now." He stepped closer. "Now I'm here." Willa nodded, then gestured to the easel. "I wanted to show you something." He walked toward it slowly, then stopped short when he saw what was on the canvas. It was a painting. A street corner worn brick buildings, a slant of snow, a bundled-up man kneeling beside a child. In the center, a woman frozen mid-step, scarf fluttering around her neck. He stared. "You painted this," he said. "Yes." He looked at her, his voice tight. "You remembered every detail." "I never forgot," she said. "That moment changed everything for me." He reached out, fingers skimming the edge of the canvas. "I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything." He turned to face her fully now. "I've been trying to figure out where I belong in your world." Willa didn't move, and I don't belong in skyscrapers and luxury cars and places where dinner costs more than my rent." Her breath caught, but he kept going. "But I realized something else." She waited. "Maybe the goal isn't to belong in your world. Maybe it's to build one that's ours." She blinked. "What does that look like?" "A place where Sunday mornings mean pancakes and paintbrushes, where Jace gets to grow up seeing that love doesn't have to be perfect to be real, where you don't have to be the woman everyone expects you to be, and I don't have to prove anything to anyone." Her eyes softened, and for a long moment she said nothing. Then she stepped forward, taking his hand. "You've already built that world, Noah. I just want to live in it with you." The rain had started again, light and cool. He looked up, then back at her. "This is a ridiculous place to fall in love." "I already fell," she said. "I just want to know if you're going to catch me." He leaned in, raindrops clinging to his hair, and kissed her. It wasn't dramatic or practiced. It was warm, sure, and exactly right. A moment later, the elevator doors behind them opened again. "Dad." Jace came running across the rooftop, followed by Willa's driver, who gave a helpless shrug before retreating to the door. Noah crouched just in time to catch him. "Hey, buddy, what are you doing here?" "Willa invited me," he said, clearly delighted. "She said you might need my help for dessert." Willa grinned. "I figured if anyone could convince you to stay, it was him." Jace held up a small box. "I made brownies with the lady from downstairs. They might be burnt. Noah laughed. That's all right. Burnt brownies are a tradition. Willa bent down beside them. Did you bring the whipped cream? Jace nodded solemnly. It's in the car. I guarded it the whole way. Noah looked between the two of them, his son, beaming in the rain, and Willa, who hadn't blinked once since she'd stepped onto the rooftop. I don't have a ring, he said suddenly. She tilted her head. Is that a problem? I don't have a ring, he repeated, but I do have a son who thinks you're the best thing since chocolate chips, and I've got a heart that's not interested in anyone else. She stared at him, rain sliding down her cheek. Are you asking me something? I'm asking if you'll stay. Not just tonight. Not just on rooftops or in galleries. I'm asking if you'll build that world with me, one that's messy and loud and full of pancakes. She didn't hesitate. Yes. Jace threw his arms around both of them. Can we have a dog in this world? Willa laughed. Only if he doesn't eat the whipped cream. They stood there, all three of them, as the city twinkled behind them and the rain kept falling, soft and steady. Later that night, back in Noah's apartment, Willa sat cross-legged on the floor, helping Jace glue glitter stars onto a poster for school. Noah stood in the doorway, arms folded, watching them. His world hadn't changed overnight. The rent was still due, the faucet still leaked, but something had shifted. He didn't feel like an outsider anymore. He felt like he was home. And Willa Billionaire, investor, woman who once stood on a snow-covered street corner with no idea what would come next, was part of that home now. Not because she'd given up her world, but because she'd chosen to step into his. And together, they'd build something better. Not perfect, just real. A full month later, Noah Reed stood in the center of a sunlit gallery in Tribeca, staring at a wall that held 5 of his own paintings. He hadn't planned to show them. He hadn't planned any of this. But then again, nothing about the last few weeks had followed a plan, and somehow, that had made everything better. 5 distinct pieces hung in a clean arc, each one capturing a different corner of the city through his eyes. Not how it was, but how it felt. The warmth of early morning light on cracked pavement, the way rainwater shimmered in alleyways, the quiet strength in a father's shoulders as he carried a sleeping child home. And at the center of it all, one piece anchored the collection. A woman seated on a fire escape, barefoot, sketchbook in her lap, looking out at a city that had no idea it was being watched by. Willa stood just behind him, her hand brushing his. Are you nervous? She asked. I'm terrified, he murmured, but it feels good, like it matters. She turned toward the nearest canvas. It does, it's honest. You didn't try to make it pretty, you made it true. He glanced over. You're good at reading people. I'm great at reading you. Before he could answer, a short woman in a bright green dress approached, adjusting her glasses. Mr. Reed, she said, holding out a card. My name's Celeste. Run a studio that supports local artists' residencies, commissions, gallery space. Would you be open to talking? Noah blinked. You mean like more of this? Exactly like more of this. You have an eye for emotional architecture. It's rare. He took her card slowly. I'd love to talk. Willa waited until Celeste walked away before nudging his arm. That was your first pitch. I didn't even say anything. You didn't need to. Your work did. They moved to the back of the room where a small table with drinks and finger food had been set up. Jace was there, sitting cross-legged on a bench, carefully rearranging the toothpicks in the fruit tray into a geometric pattern. Dad, he said, not looking up, your painting with the yellow one got 2 whole people staring at it for 10 minutes. Noah laughed. I saw you keeping track. I've got a system. Willa leaned over to whisper, I think he's planning to start your fan club. First member, Noah said, ruffling his son's curls. Later, with the gallery slowly emptying, Noah and Willa stepped outside into the spring air. The sky was soft gray, the air thick with the promise of rain that hadn't yet arrived. They walked to the corner in silence, their shoulders brushing. "Do you remember that day?" she asked. He didn't need to ask which one she meant. "I remember thinking you looked like someone who wasn't used to waiting." She smiled faintly. "I wasn't." "You waited for me," he said. "I'd do it again." He stopped walking. "I never asked if this us fits into your life. I've been so busy figuring out how I belong in yours, I forgot to ask if you want this long term." Willa turned, her expression calm. "I didn't bring you into my life, Noah. I left mine to build a new one with you. That wasn't temporary." He studied her face, the quiet certainty that lived in her eyes. "You walked away from billion-dollar meetings. You gave up board seats. You live in a 2-bedroom apartment now." "I wanted room for the parts of me that don't fit in skyscrapers. Like the part that wants to wake up next to someone who doesn't care about my net worth. The part that wants burnt pancakes and messy mornings." He reached for her hand. "Then, I think it's time we make it official." Her brow lifted. "Are you proposing?" "You're the one who taught me big gestures matter," he said, "but I needed to do this my way." He pulled a small envelope from his coat pocket and handed it to her. She opened it, unfolding a sheet of thick paper. Her eyes moved across the lines slowly. It was a drawing, a sketch in charcoal of her standing at the foot of a staircase, Jace halfway up, Noah at the landing. Their hands all reaching for each other. "It's not a ring," he said. "It's a promise. That I'm building this life with you, that I want you in it forever, that Jace and we've already chosen you." She swallowed, then looked up. "Then, I guess it's only fair I make a promise too." She pulled something from her purse. A key, small, silver, worn at the edges. "This is to the studio I bought last week. For you, with a skylight and wall space and enough room for Jace's exploding Lego collection. And maybe one day, a dog." He stared at the key, stunned. "You bought me a studio." "I bought us a place to create, a place that's ours." He took the key, his throat tight. "You didn't have to." "I wanted to. You gave me something I didn't think I'd ever find." He stepped forward, his voice low. "What's that?" "A life that doesn't need to be perfect to be worth everything." He kissed her then, right there on the sidewalk, under the gray sky that now felt like it belonged only to them. 6 months later, the studio buzzed with quiet life. Canvases leaned against the walls, some half-painted, others already spoken for by collectors who discovered his work through the Tribeca show. Willa sat by the window, laptop open on her knees, barefoot, hair pulled into a lazy knot. She handled investments now on her terms, small businesses, artists, community projects. She'd reshaped her empire without ever leaving it. Jace lay on the floor nearby, sketching a 3-headed dragon in bright crayons. The dog, a shaggy golden mutt they'd adopted from a rescue in Brooklyn, snored under the table. Noah stood at the easel, brush in hand, watching his family. They didn't need anything more. Not the penthouses or galas or headlines. Just mornings like this filled with coffee, laughter, and the low hum of possibility. He turned back to his canvas and started to paint. Not a city, not a skyline. This time he painted a home, and every brushstroke was love.